You've done the work. You've read the books, maybe done some therapy, watched the videos. You understand that anxious thoughts are not facts. You know that engaging with them makes them worse, and you know the goal is not to take the bait. But then a thought comes, and something feels different about this one. This one feels important. This one actually feels like it needs your attention. This one feels like all those rules you learn about let it go, don't engage, it's just anxiety, doesn't apply here because this situation is different, because the stakes are too high. Because what if this one time the fear is actually right? And before you know it, you are 3 hours deep in your own head doing the very thing you promised yourself that you would no longer do. That is not a willpower problem. This is not a sign that the tools don't work. This is not evidence that your fear is the exception. This is a very specific trick that anxiety plays on people who are already in recovery and is one of the most common reasons people stall. Today we have Drew Linsalata, the host of the Anxious Truth podcast. He's an author, and he is someone who has spent years helping people recognize exactly this pattern. Today we're going to get into it, what this trick is, why anxiety deploys it specifically when you're doing the work, and what you actually can do when your brain is screaming at you that this one is different. Drew, welcome.
Hello, my friend. Hi, Kim. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I also should have mentioned in the intro, like this is also just like an awesome human being who I love spending time with.
We're talking about just like how it's so lucky we met, right? And just became friends and all that stuff. So,
I know, I know. I'm just so grateful for you, and I love that we are so aligned in pretty like almost everything we talk about, except that I love AI and you hate AI, correct?
yeah, but other than that, we're in pretty much lockstep. It's all good.
Well, we're cappuccino obsessed, we're anxiety obsessed, all the things.
Two over caffeinated therapists just doing their thing, living their best lives. It's all good.
Yes,
So,
it's
anyway,
very, very, very
yeah,
true.
pretty good.
Okay, let's talk about it. Before we get into this idea, I just want to first understand like what is the cost of what's happening here? Like what is making this pattern so damaging, right? So why is it so demoralizing? We're speaking specifically to folks who have listened to your podcast, mine, they know what to do, but they just keep getting stuck.
Yeah, I think it's demoralizing. I like how you call it a cost. It's pretty accurate. There is a cost to this. I think the cost is there's no forward movement, right? So there's a great degree of understanding, and I think you probably see it in your comment section, in your social media, in your practice, like I do. There's a huge amount of understanding, which is really awesome. You need that before you can move forward, of course. But the cost is, but we don't actually get any movement. There's no behavioral activation. There's no behavioral change. So while I totally understand why people want to carve out an exception, even if they don't want to, they're not trying to be resistant. Nobody's trying to be defiant or resistant or difficult ever. But I understand why that exception clause gets invoked so often. It usually starts with the word but, or for me, we can talk about that. But the cost of that is, why do I know all the things, but I can't do it? And then they get really down on themselves and they start to feel like they really are different. Like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Exception clause says why the rules can't apply to you. Kim and Drew are talking, yeah, for everybody else, but not for me, but for me, and then you stop because of the exception clause, and then the exception clause becomes true. Yes, look, it is special. I can't do this.
Yeah. Tell me exactly what like you are the designer, you are the namer and the caller outer of this term, the exception clause. Tell me exactly what it is in your mind.
Yeah, I think, and I just sort of made that up. If maybe I stole it, I don't know, but I don't think I did. The exception clause is that part of the contract with your anxiety disorder, right? That it will always invoke that clause that says, yeah, but what about when? And usually, when the exception clause has been invoked when you hear words like what about when, or what about when it's, or but for me it's, or yeah, but those are the hallmarks of the exception clause. And that's not somebody invoking the clause. That's the disorder invoking the clause. Like, stop listening to these two because OCD or panic disorder or agoraphobia will whisper in your ear. They don't understand that for us, like the cult leader in your head says, it's DPDR. Like they can't possibly be saying that you have to allow that, right? They can't possibly be. So that's what the exception clause is. Whatever scares you the most today, because by the way, that's going to morph over time, as anybody who struggled for any amount of time knows. Today it's this thought, tomorrow it's a different thought. Today it's this symptom. 2 months from now, it's a different symptom. Whatever scares you the most today becomes the topic of the exception clause that says, yeah, but what about when it's that? You
Yeah.
can't be talking about that, right?
Right. And I think that, I think it's so interesting because apparently the most common Googled term for in the anxiety disorders is, "Why does it feel so real?"
Yeah, sure.
And I think that that is a piece of this exception clause is because you're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I agree, like, we gotta diffuse from our thoughts, and we're gonna let it be there, and all the things, and, you know, I've read all the books, and I know all the things." Like, some of my clients know more about anxiety than probably I do,
Sure.
but because it feels so real in that moment, we, meaning me included, like, we fall for what you call the exception clause.
So when your disorder says, no, 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 this is an exception, like that willful tolerance, acceptance, floating, diffusion thing that those guys are, no, it doesn't count here. You can't apply it here where this is an exception. And it usually it's because it feels so real to me. How do you know it feels so real? Well, you get more scared or it feels more important or urgent or it feels like an emergency. Why? Well, because it's very convincing. A very powerful feeling can be very convincing. So like, no acceptance in this situation. And I use that as a very broad term, mindful awareness, whatever you want to say, can't apply here because this truly is urgent or too important to leave alone or too dangerous to allow. That's not true, but that's the argument.
Talk to me deeper about that because so often I think under the layers of the exception in my practice we call it the rebuttal compulsion. Like there's a rebuttal. The anxiety is going, we always play this idea of like, say to your brain like I'm going to use this skill and then your OCD goes, "Yeah, but, as you've said, go a little deeper for folks." So they are trying to apply the skills. Their brain has come up with an exception or a rebuttal to using the skills. What strategy or what steps would you encourage them to take in that moment?
I'm a big fan of like present moment awareness as a way to like really shine a light on that, on the rebuttal clause or the exception clause or whatever you want to call it. I love rebuttal compulsion. That's pretty good. And I think in that situation, it's like, okay, well, I want to take that brave action. I'm at the precipice. I'm ready. I want to do it. But like, no, I can't really take the action because it can't be. You can't tell me that I have to step forward into this abyss, this dangerous, horrible thing, right? But I want to do it. Okay, let's stop. Let's see. What does it feel like to stand on that edge? What's going on right now? And usually, if we can bring somebody back to the present moment, which is my heart is pounding, I'm sweating, my stomach feels like it's doing flip flops, I'm having a lot of really scary thoughts about maybe the health of my kids or my own safety, whatever it is. Okay. And I'm just so scared right now. Okay, that's fine. Right now, you are scared or uncertain, or you feel really vulnerable or unsure, and your body's reacting to that. That's what's actually happening right now. So, what's about that stops you from taking the next step? Oh, well, this feeling tells me that. And then we can unmask the part where the current experience is interpreted as a projection or a prediction. Like, no, 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 no. Your heart is racing, you're sweating, your legs are jelly, you're having DPDR, you're having scary thoughts about something very important to you. That's what's happening right now. Why couldn't you take that feeling with you and take the next step forward? Oh, because it means that. No, 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 no. Let's forget the part where it means that. It doesn't mean anything. It means you're scared. And
Yeah.
that's what it feels like to be scared right now. I
Yeah.
find that to be pretty helpful. That's a big ask, though. That's hard work.
Well, I think that there's also before you like, I wanna keep going deeper into this.
Yeah.
I think of, myself and one that comes to mind here, one that does trick me, and there is a part of the clause for me personally, so I'll give that as an example because I think this shows up for a lot of folks. So, I used to have a really hard time dropping my son off at school. In my mind, I had a bad feeling, right? I just had a bad feeling about it. There
Mm.
was literally no facts. Like, it's not like there was a mean guy walking around the outside of the school. It's not like there was a tornado coming in. Like, no one had given actual hard evidence, but I get a bad feeling. And the exception clause for me was it's not worth taking the risk. Even though I'm like, this is probably all my anxiety. I'm looking around, I'm in the present, I can see, I'm smart, there's no danger. But is it worth taking the risk? Is it worth the 1% it's like a gambling game. That was my exception clause, right? Like, are you willing really to take the risk of that 1%? Because you could just pick him up and take him home. Like that would be it would but be a bummer. You wouldn't get your work done today, but you wouldn't have to take that risk. Talk to me about how someone might navigate that.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really excellent point because even if somebody gets, okay, I get it. It's just, and I hear this in my practice. Okay, I get it. It's just a feeling. I understand. It's just a fear. It's just a thought, but I don't think I could take that kind of risk. And then bam, the brakes go on again. And sometimes, and this is I think the part that's unpleasant about the work that we do. And I hate saying this to people or I hate even suggesting it to people, but I will usually remind them the last time you bet on just in case and took that course of action, how did you feel 2 hours later or the next day? Right. And I unfortunately, we have to do that. Like, I know, I do understand that what you're doing, and we have to validate that. I think it's critically important because sometimes people listen to podcasts like this one or watch us on YouTube or whatever, and they think we're sort of minimizing. Like, well, they don't have you ever been told, clearly you've never felt what I felt, right? And I understand why people, I don't take it personally. Like, no, I actually have. And
Yeah.
so that's why I want to validate that in that moment, you truly feel like you are doing something that carries an actual risk.
Yeah.
You do feel like you are making a reckless, risky decision. That's correct. But that's why courage enters into this. So, like,
Yeah.
I have a lot of evidence here that tells me that I truly feel like in the moment where I'm at the precipice and I want to leap, but yet I'm making a prediction based on my feeling that something bad will happen if I do that. Okay, fine. Come to the present moment. It's just a feeling. I get that part, but really, I don't fully believe it. So there's still some percentage of risk that I think I'm taking. I know.
Yeah.
So you jump anyway. I
Yeah.
hate that part because there's no steps to that. There's no technique. There's no nothing. It's like, I know you'll only believe after you jump. And then you
Yeah.
can look back and say, oh, I can't believe I got fooled all those times.
Yeah, yeah. For me, having where I actually got to the point where I was like, I knew that there was a pattern, right? I could see that. But for me, what the big shift was going back to that, like we talked about at the beginning, the cost, which is like, yeah, cool. I kept my kid alive, right? But I probably he would also be alive if I hadn't have dropped him off. But the cost is if I keep living to this exception clause, if I keep following the exception clause and using that as like I think there's like a legal term for like, I can't think of what it is, but if I keep following that, I'm not going to get the work I needed to get done. My son's going to miss out on school. Like there are costs to being a just in case girl. I'll keep mine just in case. Like, I didn't ever do that, but I'm saying that's what my brain wanted me to do. So I love that you've outlined the costs, and it is that understanding of this. If I keep living according to the exception clause, I don't get to live my life the way I want to.
There's lately I've been doing this because I don't know why these are in my office, but they are, and you'll see in a second. If you're on video, cool. Sometimes people will say, like, okay, we want to make a values-based decision. We talk about that stuff all the time in the work we do. But it can be really hard when you're in that moment of decision, about to leap, right? You're taking this brave leap into the unknown and like, all right, I'll trust you, I'll leap. It's really hard to make that decision based on what you're going to get in 6 months. It's really hard to do that because that one leap isn't going to change your life. And it's not like later on that night you're fixed, you're recovered, and your life is great. Then it would be easy for people. So instead of trying to motivate people or have them connect to, the benefit, we connect to the cost. And I will say, so now I'm going to hold up this big ass kettlebell, right? There's a kettlebell next to my own. So imagine that this is the emotional cost. I don't even care about the functional cost. I care about the emotional cost. Every day I wake up that I live as just in case guy, like you said, if I live in, I have this weight that I carry all the time. And it shows up in like what's wrong with me. Next time I watch Kim's next podcast, yeah, I love it, but like it makes me feel bad because why can't I get this? My family is looking at me sideways. They're growing. They're out of patience with me. I'm out of patience with me. I'm starting to feel like a failure. This kettlebell on my shoulder just stays with me all the time. So do I get something if I take the leap of faith again and again and learn? Yeah, I do. But really, what do I lose in
Yeah,
this moment if I take a leap of faith right now? I get to put this weight down. Like
yeah,
that feels so much better.
right.
So
It's so true. It's a
that's
great
the
visual.
cost. Yeah, that's the cost. Like, imagine you wake up in the morning and I hand you a 50-pound plate and I make you carry it all day long. And all you got to do to put that plate down is make the leap in the
Yeah,
hard moment, right? So there's,
yeah,
if the exception clause keeps that weight on your head, that
yes.
cloud stays over you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you brought up the value-based thing because that's actually one of the biggest exception clauses I hear clients use. So let's just use my example of my
Mhm.
son. Again, it's as much fictional. I never pulled my kid out of school for that reason, but let's just use it.
And he's
It's
still
in
angry at you for that, by the way.
Yeah. Oh no, he would love it.
Mom, I wanted to stay home. Come on, just in
Help me
case.
listen to the exception clause today. Come on, it's not worth the risk, is what he would be
Yeah,
saying, right?
exactly. Can you live with that if I die
Yeah.
on the playground? Come on. So
But that's the point. That's the point I was just gonna make is sometimes the trickiest exception clause is one of the skills that we teach, which is like live according to your values. I can't tell you how many clients have said, my values are to keep my son alive.
yeah.
Like I want to live my life by building a business or going in to work or, I want to be at home and garden, whatever. And so, yes, it is according to my values to let him be at school, but it's my values, like my anxiety dressed up as values, as the exception clause is like, no, but you really value being a good mother, and a good mother would keep her son home because you had that gut feeling that something bad was going to happen. Like, that's where it's so tricky. The exception clause can even use some of the skills as the exception.
Yeah. Oh, I like to say it hijacks the jargon, like,
Yes,
hijacks the word values. So
yes,
that and I have to tell you, you've been practicing way longer than I have, but, like, I see it most in OCD, GAD, and health anxiety. Those are
yes,
3 places that the disorder will hijack the word values,
yes,
right?
yes,
But you don't understand, like, health is one of my values. Like,
yes,
I value wellness. So if I Google all day long or compulsively check my skin or keep asking if I have cancer, I'm living according to the value. And I would say, well, it knows enough to hijack the word, doesn't it?
yeah,
But that's not the way to do it. Like, it knows how to say, this is your values, but it
yeah,
doesn't actually know how to go toward your values. So it's a lie. Like,
yeah,
I understand you could value the safety of your kid, and I would too, and I encourage you to do that. But that's not the way to guarantee the safety of your kids. So it's a disguise. It's like, no, no, look, safety happened at the end. Yeah, but safety was going to happen anyway.
yeah,
Or in a way, it uses an illusion. The
yes,
exception clause will promise you that this is the way to achieve the value, but it never is. That it because how you know that you regret doing it. You keep regret doing it. So that's how you know that wasn't right. That wasn't right. That wasn't right. Yeah.
yeah. No, I think that's true. Like actual safety. If I was living according to my values, it would be like putting his seatbelt on in the morning. Or holding his hand if while we walk across the street and looking to the left and looking to the right as we cross the street. That is actual safety, but actual safety is not a feeling that you get. And that's hard. I mean, especially for folks with anxiety, because I think intuition can get confusing. And I love how you talked about the jargon. Okay, this is where I would have. I'm curious, actually, Drew, your thoughts. Like, this is where I would say for the folks listening, sit down, pause this if you need to, and write down all of the exceptions that your anxiety uses against you. Like, actually do that for homework. Jot it down, keep it in the notes in your phone so that you can become aware of it. Because sometimes we're not even aware. What do you think of that? Or is that something you would or would not give as homework?
No, well, I'm a big fan of like I call it watching your gears turn, right? So we're using that mindful awareness skill and we try to practice that all the time. So like, yeah, I would make an inventory of that because then you're not why are you surprised that it will declare that, but dizzy, but what about when you're dizzy? What about when you think you're going to have a psychotic break? But what about when it's about your kids? It can't be that I know. Well, expect
Yeah.
that to happen. So I try to teach my clients all the time like it is not news that you got a big feeling about the safety of your child in that moment. We already knew it was coming. So if you know it's coming, you can watch the gears turn a little bit more effectively. Like there it is, right on schedule. There's the exception clause. Like what happens when I follow that? And yeah, there's a big feeling. It comes with a big feeling. When I follow that, what happens? I wind up having a really bad feeling later, and I have that weight is still on my shoulder. So can I? What if I challenge it today?
Yeah. This is, I think, real for the folks who do a lot of compulsions. I think that there are a lot of folks who do compulsions because of this exception clause. I think where this gets really clever is with folks with health anxiety and OCD, specifically to the exceptions to why they should do compulsion.
Yeah,
Right. I have a client who'll say, no, but I have to do a presentation. I know the compulsions are stupid. I know they don't help, but I'll just perform better if I just get this compulsion out of the way. And that's a fact. They actually do perform better
sure.
because they can sort of like neutralize their obsession, make it a negative thought into a positive thought, and then they can move on to their day. Is there any exception to this work in the exception clause when it comes to folks who are like, yeah, no, but if I just wash my hands, I'll feel so much better? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's going to sound surprising, but I believe there are. Yeah. So, like, there are people sometimes I'll work with that, like, you know what? You may have a few quirks that we don't have to take away from you. I care about functional impact. I always care about functional impact, right? So if you give a public address once every 4 months and there is a routine you need to go through to feel good on that stage, and it literally occupies 12 minutes of your life every 6 months, and you have a better time doing your presentation, well, who cares? Like, knock yourself out. If for some reason that starts to spread into the rest of your life and you hate that you did it, well, then okay. Like, I don't care. So like I really only care about functional impact. If it's a once in a while thing and it works for you. Hey, listen, I'm a huge hockey fan, right? Hockey fans are some of the most superstitious MFers on the planet. Like, I had a great game last time, so I must lace up my skates the same way. What's the damage? There's none. What's the difference? I was going to get dressed for the next game anyway, so who cares? But that is a very individual thing, right? So militantly in psychoeducation, I'm going to say, no, we don't negotiate with terrorists. And then your anxiety disorder is like a terrorist in your head. But when we get down to working individually with somebody, yeah, we may find that like that's actually not a problem. Keep doing that. Who cares?
It totally does. It totally does. Okay, so let's round this out because I think what you're bringing to light here is if we can become aware of the exception clause, we have a leg up on recovery. It will accelerate your recovery if you are every morning aware of what exception clauses are going to show up and you have a plan and a strategy for how to handle it. And ultimately, the skills are the same, but I love that you're sort of bringing this to awareness. What is something that you really want people to remember in regards to the exception clause? Like if you could really hone it in, what is it that people need to leave here with and really understand?
I try to frame the appearance of the exception clause as a reflection of what you care most about. And that's okay. So the exception clause isn't an instruction to stay stuck. The instruction clause is a reflection of what I care about the most. My health, my well being, my sanity, my children, the love for my partner. Yeah, it's okay. You know why that's an exception to you? Because it speaks to a thing that's very important or dear to you or precious to you. And that is okay. Just remember that the exception clause is not the right strategy for preserving the precious thing. It is theater. It is nothing. It is performative. It's fiction. You think you are preserving the important thing. So just recognize that when the exception clause shows up, yeah, no, but I can't accept DPDR. Just that's the thing that scares you the most because you've attached that to a very important outcome. No problem. You're allowed to care about that, but it is absolute theater and fiction to think that your response, the exception clause response, which is retreat or avoidance or compulsion, it's sprinkles on an ice cream cone. It's window dressing. It's icing. It's theater. It's not actually preserving you at all. That's a hard sell, but that's true.
Well, I think the work we do is hard. It's
Sure.
not easy, but
This is easy. Hanging
yeah.
out with you is easy.
Yeah. Tell me where people can find out more about you, hear
Uh,
about you, and all the things.
Yeah, just go to theanxioustruth.com or if you search for me or The Anxious Truth, you're going to find all of the books and the podcast. And
Yeah.
yeah,
You're doing such beautiful work. Thank you so much
thank
for
you.
all the work you do.
This was great. A lot of fun. We'll do it again. I hope.